There's a topic that's near and dear to everybody in digital marketing right now. How do you get and thrive in a great job at a great company? And then looking at it from the side of the hiring company, how do you find and hire those superstars and then release them to drive the most value for your company? So we decided to go directly to the expert source. Today we're going to speak with Jeff Gunderson. He's the CEO and founder of Executive Connections, LLC. Jeff, thank you for your time today.
Bethany, it's a pleasure to be here with you. And it's an exciting time to be in marketing.
For individuals, you emphasize before anything else, proactive development of a personal brand. Why is that so important?
You know, it's important to have clarity, particularly with marketing shifting so rapidly today, Bethany. Having clarity about a personal brand gives you a direction that you can use in order to make career decisions that are both purposeful and strategic. And it's also important to stay on brand as opposed to going off brand. There's so much happening that we spend a lot of time with our clients talking them off the ledge from making the wrong brand decisions. And those wrong brand decisions can be very costly, both number one, to your long-term brand value, and as importantly, to your long-term career satisfaction. And then three, there's two ways to go about your career management, and one is if you build a stellar brand and you build an outstanding reputation, then you're somebody who's in the attraction model. You're somebody who's sought after. And to be honest with you, having been in the executive search and recruiting game for over 15 years, I know and I'm contacted constantly by many unemployed or out of work marketers, but it's not those people that typically we're asked to go after. We're after the rising stars, and we're after the current stars at the number one or number two performing brands in each category. So being a stellar brand really is what sets you out from the rest of the pack.
Right. And this might be a no-brainer, but is it critical at this point? If you are not establishing and maintaining a personal brand, are you going to get hired by the top companies?
No, I don't believe so. I don't think it's enough just to be operating well within your company without, sort of shining your own light or creating a bigger visibility for yourself. Right. And I think that's one of the challenges. I think so many of the top marketers, as well as other senior executives, are so busy, focused on building the businesses and the brands that are under their stewardship, that they aren't spending as much time as they need to on building their own brand and promoting their own brand profile.
Okay, so let's start to break it down. I think being in marketing, we're all familiar with a company brand. With a personal brand, what does that include? Is that a social presence? Is that the relationships?
It's very similar, Bethany. It's really the same as branding. It's really what your brand represents. It's your unique promise of value. It's your reputation. It's everything that you create and that leaves an impression about you to others.
Right.
And it's ultimately, as Procter & Gamble says, it's your ability to, because they say they're not a packaged goods company, they're a marketing company. So as a personal brand, it's ultimately about your ability to, again, set yourself apart and be worth a premium in the marketplace. Of course, your physical brand, starts in the physical world, with your personal appearance, your wardrobe, your grooming, your handshake, your confidence, what we like to call boardroom presence or gravitas, which we're looking for, particularly in senior marketers. And then it continues on to your leadership skills and your communication skills and your ability to execute and deliver performance. But today, in this increasingly social and mobile world, it also is how we're showing up online. And it's the technology that we use, it's how we are presenting ourselves in social media networks and communities. It's our articles, our blogs, and the thought leadership that we put out there, and ultimately what people find when they Google us prior to meeting with us.
I think it sounds great, and certainly I want to have the right blog posts out there about, my areas of expertise. I want to be tweeting wisely. But can you tell us actually where we step back and where we really get started? I mean, do we take a personal inventory? How do we get started with our personal brand?
Well, I think before you can go out and start to communicate into the marketplace, it's very important for you to understand, for each marketer to understand who they are, what their brand is, and what it's not.
Okay.
We go through a very rigorous process in terms of personal branding with our clients, and that process starts by conducting a very comprehensive inventory of your vision, of your values, of your purpose, of your future, of your goals. And importantly, this needs to integrate both your professional side as well as your personal side. We've also found, having represented and worked with and recruited a lot of senior women marketing executives, that this is even more important for women who in addition to being busy and thriving executives, are also integrating being wives, mothers, and in some cases caregivers to aging parents. And I've been with a lot of senior women recently that kind of talk about the challenge of, and they don't want to talk about it as balancing. They want to talk about it as integrating. The second step in the personal branding process then is to talk to a lot of people, to survey, your bosses, your peers, your subordinates, your clients, your friends and your family, to see how they feel you're showing up as a brand. And then when you've gone through all of that sort of introspection and analysis, you want to draw out of it, the richness, the big themes, the major defining characteristics that make you distinct. Because really what we're looking for are the distinctive edges. Think about the big iconic brands, whether it's Steve Jobs or, Richard Branson or other, brands that we think of, and we think of immediately those kind of adjectives, that describe them. And it's those kinds of attributes that we're looking for that basically then are the ones that, again, set you apart and make you unique in a very positive way. And of course, those are the things from a branding standpoint that you want to accentuate and communicate going forward.
Right. And just to break that down and get specific, in the current marketplace, is that skill sets, areas of expertise, or is that more being a forward thinker and someone who's able to innovate and respond very nimbly in a changing marketplace?
I think it's to some extent about skill sets, but I think it's really more about personal characteristics. We see themes in many different types of executives, and there are different executives who are better, let's say, for entrepreneurial or early stage businesses or launching brands or creating brands. And when you track back into their history, their parents, or one of their parents, might have been an entrepreneur, and they grew up and for whatever reason were inspired and they started businesses right in college or shortly after college. And even some of the most successful entrepreneurs, you look at the Mark Zuckerbergs and others, there's so many examples of the Googles and the Facebooks and others where these are, like back in the days of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, these people dropped out of school and started businesses that are now among the major suppliers in the advertising and media world.
Right. Boy, it starts to beg the question, are good leaders developed or are they born? It's obviously sort of a combination of both, but I think we need to give equal credit on both sides too.
No, absolutely. And I think majority of people that get into marketing have some passion for psychology, have some passion for understanding consumer behavior or just behavior in general. And then they typically have personality on top of that because it takes a lot of passion and personality to be a marketer and to adopt and develop the attributes of the brands that you're promoting.
Sure. Okay. So we take a good inventory and we look at our skill set, we look at our characteristics, we look at those things that we uniquely can bring to a company. What's the next step then in actually turning that into a personal brand?
The next step in the process is really all about communication. And it's about building, it's like the brands, again, that we launch. It's about building awareness, it's about building trial, it's about building purchase, it's about building loyalty.
Sure.
And that first step in that process really starts with the target audience. And really it's the target audience, not necessarily that you are in community with right now, which might be your peers and colleagues. And what we really find, which is a little bit of a challenge for most senior marketing executives, is they spend so much time insular within their company that they don't have a very wide view of the universe, and particularly a wide view even outside their category.
Sure.
So that when it comes time for them to think about their personal brand, their career development, and things in that area, what they come up with is they come up short on having the connections and the resources to help them to make that next career move.
Right.
So by waiting until it's too late, it's difficult. So identifying that target audience and beginning to cultivate relationships, which can mean getting out and speaking at industry conferences, which can mean becoming part of different types of a chief marketing officer or other networking groups that include CMOs across other industries.
Yep.
And I was at Advertising Week in New York about 2 weeks ago, and there were many panels like that, a couple of which I had helped to organize and put together, where we brought chief marketing officers from technology together with retail, together with packaged goods, together with media, so we could have a conversation about where marketing is and where it's evolving to. The second step in that plan is then creating an integrated personal communication plan. Once you've got the target audience, it's around your personal communication plan,
Sure.
including offline and online elements, so that you can begin to get your message and get your brand out in front of your target audience with some consistency and with some credibility. And that's really what your goal is. And of course, for us, the centerpiece of this tends to be what we call repositioning and repackaging, or repositioning and packaging of the personal brand. And so it really becomes your personal branded bio. It becomes your resume, your updated resume, your LinkedIn profile, other social media profiles, the type of thought leadership topics that you are out there speaking on, blogging on, or contributing to books on in the marketing universe. And it's really about that plan and getting it organized and getting it executed effectively.
Sure.
And it sounds like a lot of extra work, and it does take extra time, and I'm not making light of that, but in order to continue to build and advance your brand, and in many cases in ways that are also consistent with raising the visibility and the notoriety of your own company's brand, it's something that as you put the effort into it, you'll see an awful lot of return.
Oh, I'm sure. And I know that you're right on the inside, so you certainly know the effectiveness of leaders who do and do not have personal brands. Why don't we go a little bit more brass tacks? Are there 2 do's and 2 don'ts that you can tell us about this process?
Well, certainly in the do's, my do number 1 would be, be courageous.
Sure.
Wanting to build a personal brand and wanting to become distinctive, either in your company or in your category, involves risk taking.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that the top marketers that we admire the most have repeatedly taken calculated risks at certain points in their career and succeeded and done extraordinary things that were game changing for the brands that they ran and for the companies. And it's that type of bringing that same type of thinking to the personal brand is what you need. So be courageous is number 1. My do number 2 would really be honest, and be honest with yourself, and seek the feedback and get the feedback, both positive and negative. And one of the things we really emphasize in working with marketing executives is work on the negative. Embrace it, come up with a plan. All of us can use development. So seek out the area. If you don't have strong enough digital skills, for example, or analytical skills, there are new direct marketing and digital marketing curriculums at all the major universities. I am involved with the Direct Marketing Educational Foundation, where we're in fact creating those curriculums real time at Wharton, at MIT, at Harvard, at NYU, and at Northwestern and other business schools and undergraduate schools. So go get the training, but also, in managing your brand, realizing we all have strengths and weaknesses, it's about accentuating the positive and minimizing the negative. Delegate or manage your weaknesses away.
Sure. It sounds like common sense, but it can be a little bit harder to actually do that in the real world. So that's a great reminder. How about 2 don'ts? What are 2 things we should not do in this process?
Well, I would say absolutely don't join a company or change your industry into a category that you're not passionate about the product or service involved.
Sure.
And because we've seen very frequently that people, get over there and have buyer's remorse, almost immediately, like, oh, what did I do? And again, going back to the core attributes of what makes up a terrific marketer to begin with, I think you need that passion, you need that energy, you need that vitality, because it's really ultimately about growing the business, selling products, taking products to market, innovating, and those things. And if you can't feel the passion, and then alongside of not joining an organization you don't feel passionate about the products, you also need to make sure that there's alignment with your personal values and the values of the CEO. Make sure the CEO is somebody that you admire, and also that the senior leadership team operates with values that are consistent with your values.
Oh,
so you
absolutely.
don't end up in an environment where you're going to be working for people who have a different viewpoint on work-life, balance or things of that sort.
Yeah, no, that's a great reminder that the quick decision is not usually the right decision, especially when we really want to, again, thrive in the right company for the long term. So let's look at this now from the company side as well. For companies looking to hire the right leaders, what are the main reasons that a hire doesn't work out? Or why can't companies sometimes find the right people?
This is just like an ongoing conundrum. And I say usually it's not because of a lack of technical skills. I would say that that part of the vetting process actually works the best, both on the company side and usually on the recruiting firm side. So that's really, I think, the easiest part to get. And I think at the level of the senior leadership, marketers that we're talking about, they really have the technical skills.
Sure.
So from our viewpoint and from our experience, failure is most often a result of two factors, or one of two factors. One, a lack of cultural fit, and two, a lack of agreement or alignment up front on the specific outcomes that are expected within specific timeframes.
Right.
And that second one really constitutes ultimately a failure to deliver, and really a failure of marketing to deliver. And because of this, Bethany, we have over 10 years ago as a firm, we were, I think, very innovative in the executive search field by integrating into our placement services a minimum of 6 months and up to 12 months of one-on-one career transition support to ensure that we worked with each individual senior marketing executive on those two areas, on building bridges, on number one, building bridges, building trust, and building relationships with other key stakeholders. And number two, on basically, setting and managing stakeholder expectations, so that, it's the old, expression of under promise and over deliver.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to know that it really is on both parties. It's not just for the employee or the candidate to prove themselves and to carry through. I think that the company really does have to create the right environment and really help the relationship building to be strong from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And it's, part of the challenge in this for marketers is that typically most chief marketing officers report to the CEO. And so there is some corporate marketing budget, and there are some corporate marketing activities that are actually the purview of the CEO.
Sure.
However, in the main, the majority of the marketing budget resides in the individual lines of business. And the successful execution of all the advertising and marketing campaigns involves the integration and coordination of so many areas, and particularly with now so much of it going online, the chief technology officer is involved. Right. The customer service organizations are involved, and it really goes, really horizontally across the whole enterprise.
The silos are quite porous at this point, shall we say. That's exactly it.
Yes, and they don't have all those authorities, so they have to really be able to work fairly adeptly on a cross-functional basis in order to succeed.
Absolutely. So what are the brass tacks on this? What are 3 steps that companies should take when hiring for a senior marketing position? For example, should they rely on HR, or is there something different that they can do? What are your tips?
Well, I say step one is they really need to work on clearer definitions of the roles and responsibilities, the authorities, but more importantly, what's expected from the business units within specific timeframes. Because this is really where marketing breaks down in the company. That there is an expectation that either the corporate marketing isn't delivering the performance, or that what corporate marketing is spending really it doesn't have any relationship to helping the sales force in a particular business unit to move the needle in terms of moving product off the shelf.
Absolutely.
And so step one is to get that the accountabilities and responsibilities laid out more effectively.
Okay.
Step two goes back to the alignment or the buyout. And many of these senior marketing jobs are hatched somewhere between the CEO's office with input from human resources. But again, there's not a lot of the stakeholder buy-in across the different senior business leaders and across some of the other key functional areas.
Sure.
And this is where we find it breaks down, because senior marketing officers and CMOs are not failing because of their relationship with the CEO, although they don't have that much access and that much face time with the CEO. But in general, their relationships with the CEO work okay. It's really where it breaks down is, again, in those lines of business who ultimately end up opting out of the corporate marketing programs, or don't see it sort of tying or the way to integrate and tie into their particular business. And then I'd say step three, which is again maybe the most important, is this area of focusing in on the emotional intelligence factors. separate from the job description, there's always a little line in the job description that talks about cultural fit.
Right.
But in addition to cultural fit, it's really a matter for each organization, which has its own style and personality. There's not one solution here. But for every company to look at what are the predicted emotional attributes of a successful senior marketer in that particular organization, and to make those front and center of the candidate evaluation and selection process.
Yeah.
And we can say that, from experience, we have seen many of our clients evolve from just doing this on their own with a fairly broad cross-functional interview team, and is certainly relying on outside search consultants. But we've been using psychological testing tools, and our clients have been increasingly using analytical testing of various types, psychological testing, even with the finalist candidate, a 1 to 2 hour personal interview with a psychologist. So
isn't that interesting? I hadn't heard of that before in the marketing realm.
Oh yes, no, absolutely. We are seeing it over and over and over again now. So, and we've actually been fairly far down the path where we saw certain factors, and where a psychologist, turned up some, dark attribute. Without getting into a specific circumstance, I don't want to kind of go there, but
no, sure.
But you get the point. It's really about making sure that that aspect is thoroughly vetted.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because marketing is such a unique climate where, of course, people need the skill sets and they need to have been in the trenches, so they've seen certain campaigns. And there's the whole traditional benchmarking that's a very mature part of the industry. But digital is bringing about so much change so quickly. So we need people who are nimble, people who can respond, people who can think very quickly about new technologies, new cultural shifts. I think you're right. I think that personality and the ability to respond is equally important to where you've been and what you've done.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so I loved your do's and don'ts from the candidate side. What are your do's and don'ts from the company side?
At the top of our list, Bethany, and we've had a lot of experience with this, is be willing to take a chance on the stretch candidate, on the high achiever who may be looking to step up even within your current firm. Part of our sort of long-term strategy is to put in vice presidents of marketing and then help them to work their way up to be CMOs, and likewise to help CMOs work their way up to become chief operating officers and presidents.
Sure.
And what we have found is that in many instances, the stretch candidates will be able to close the gap. They can make the leap. And they already have some credibility along the way. They've earned some of their stripes, and they're well regarded. And they've already sort of been on that list. Every company has a list of its sort of next generation leaders, to put it that way.
I love it. Okay, so focus on your stretch candidates. What's number 2?
Focus on your stretch candidates. Give those high achievers, and they'll also, believe me, they will kill themselves trying.
Yes.
And I think the other do is really for companies is do take a note of the fact that marketing has turned upside down.
Yeah.
What was a broadcast advertising and really push marketing climate is totally the opposite today. So the new skills of digital and mobile combined with analytics are really the new core competencies of tomorrow's senior marketing leaders. So do make those the top criteria, and make sure that that these skill sets are deeply embedded in the future leaders that you're selecting for those positions.
No, very important. Okay, what are your 2 don'ts from the company side?
Again, don't take a chance on cultural misfits. As we said earlier, a lack of cultural alignment is a fatal flaw for both the company and the executive, and
right.
we've never seen it work out. And our don't number 2 is don't go cheap on senior marketing talent. We talk to many clients at times who, in recession, we've been through quite a few marketing recessions where advertising and marketing dollars are reduced. And so occasionally we get into these conversations with CEOs and presidents on, well, I'd like to really kind of reduce what we're compensating our senior marketing positions.
Sure.
You get what you pay for when you're in the marketing talent universe.
And we've certainly seen companies cut the bottom out on R&D during a time of economic recession, and it's taken years for them to get that back.
No, absolutely. But for us, the bigger point is let's not lose sight of the fact at the end of the day, that the most senior marketers they're responsible for tens of millions, and in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars of marketing spend. And your marketing ROI and ultimately your business success and your ability to grow the top line is dependent upon their performance. So get the best that you can. Really that's our counsel at the end of the day.
I think that's extremely wise. Let's tack one bonus question in here. Are companies in general, looking at the Fortune 1000, looking at the major brands, are they hiring the right people? For example, you mentioned in a recent blog post the importance of including a customer-obsessed marketer to your board of directors. So are companies including the right people on their teams for today's business environment?
Bethany, I think that majority of companies that we've worked for and that we work with, which again include many of the top Fortune 100, I think they're missing the boat in terms of their boards. And I think in a couple of ways. Number one, again, as we've seen the marketing universe shifting dramatically to a customer in control world. The customer is in charge. In fact, what we're hearing and seeing through all the marketing trends is that what companies are getting back through all the social media and Twitter and other blogging and things that are going on, they're getting the kind of focus group research that they used to get from customers. But they're getting it real time. They're getting it, right now, right after they launch. I mean, look at, Apple just launched their latest new, smaller iPad.
All right, the iPad mini is here and some other announcements too.
And after 2 or 3 days, all the research is already in. We know this as quick as we know the results to the last political debate. So the point of all this is what? In the boardroom, we need, and boards need more voice of the customer, board members sitting there. Ex-CEOs steeped in consumer packaged goods marketing and other marketing backgrounds, and board members who have run major consumer businesses and who come from that customer centricity. And we see that as certainly one of the things that's lacking. And we've actually helped, even as a small boutique, several of our clients to get that sort of voice of the customer into the boardroom.
Oh, I love that. And I know I've also heard you talk about different types of diversity within leadership. Can you tell us a little bit more about some pockets that might go underrepresented?
Well, absolutely. We're first of all, we've been, huge advocates for women.
Sure.
And we have many women clients, and we've placed many senior women, not only in chief marketing officer roles, but in president and CEO roles. And I think that boards are certainly underrepresented in terms of women and also in terms of diversities. Yeah. And that's an area I think that needs a lot of attention. I think that, we've seen women, certainly in my career and over the last 2 or 3 generations, we've seen women come an awful long way. And there are many of them now that are CEOs in the top 100 global advertisers. But it's not the majority, and it's far from that, even though women are comprising well more than half the workforce. Right. So women are on the way, but they're not all the way there yet. And we need to do a better job collectively of getting more women into the boardroom.
Cool.
And one of the things that was interesting for me, Bethany, being in New York City about 2 weeks ago at something called Awni, the Advertising Women in New York, had a major breakfast at the New York Times. And it was a panel of about 6 or 7 really, really senior women. And they were talking about all types of topics related to women's career path, women mentoring women. And when this topic of sitting on boards came up, it was interesting to hear them discuss and admit that compared to their peers, their male peers, that they viewed themselves as less assertive and less aggressive in going after those top spots. So I think, the counsel that I give to a number of the CEO women that we work with, who some of whom we've placed onto boards or that we're helping to get exposure to additional board opportunities, is be more assertive on your own because they add tremendously. And we're seeing a lot more written on this in the Wall Street Journal and a lot of other media by a lot of top people about actually the very positive influence that women are providing, the ones who are already sitting on boards.
Absolutely. Then what are your thoughts about multi-generational hires within either boards or just leadership circles in marketing or for companies?
No, I think that's also very, very important because you need to have a way to be in touch with this next generation of consumers.
Sure.
So, for example, even on one of the educational boards that I sit on, we have a couple of those millennials, recent students within the first 5 years of their career, sitting on boards because we want to hear their voice. And these are the important, new consumers of tomorrow. And they're growing up. What's happening all around them in terms of mobile and social, and this is the world they grew up in. They've been on video games and technology since the beginning. Whereas for many other older generations, technology is an acquired taste.
Certainly, and for a company to be competitive or really effective, it can't be an initiative. It needs to be something that they're native to, that they're fluent with.
Absolutely.
So, Jeff, one last question. Where do you see future marketing leaders coming from?
I think one of the things that's so interesting, Bethany, is that we are seeing tomorrow's leaders coming from such a totally different place than we saw the leaders coming from in the past.
Yeah.
They are not they're not coming through the traditional advertising agency ranks. They're not even necessarily coming through the traditional brand management ranks. We're seeing tomorrow's future marketing leaders coming from many of the startups, like the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Pinterests, and so many of these and hundreds of other new media, mobile, social, and marketing technology startups. And we are seeing this exploding. And we're seeing actually the type of backgrounds of those people are not your traditional psychology majors or marketing majors. Not that there aren't a lot of those good ones coming along, but there are a generation of engineers, scientists, advanced analytics professionals, and they are the ones who are creating, designing, programming all these new marketing and media technologies that are delivering the real-time media and marketing, and now soon mobile payment solutions.
Isn't it so interesting? I think that digital marketing and marketing in general is just the most interesting environment to be watching right now, the whole ecosystem. I think a lot of the innovation and change is even coming from people who are not from traditional marketing entering the space and bringing in their ideas, their technologies. Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. This has just been really enlightening getting to speak with you.
Well, same here, Bethany. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and look forward to the opportunity for future conversations.
Great. If people have additional questions, where can they reach you?
They can reach us at www.executiveconnectionsllc.com, or my personal email is my first initial J, Gunderson, at executiveconnectionsllc.com.
Wonderful. Once again, this is Jeff Gunderson. He's CEO and founder of Executive Connections LLC. Jeff, thank you so much.
You're welcome.